I accomplished the twisted plot to hide a double murder. What if your darkest thoughts, whispered to an eye, became the blueprint for murder? When two bright US students vanished, investigators stumbled upon a chilling confession not to a person, but to code, revealing a terrifying fusion of technology and terror. This is the case where a killer didn't just plan a double murder. He asked for instructions. The sterile air of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office hummed with a low-grade anxiety. It was Friday, April 17th, a day meant for the gentle slide into the weekend, but for Detective Sarah Jenkins, it was an abrupt plunge into the abyss. A frantic call had shattered the morning calm. Two University of South Florida students, Zamil and Nita, were missing. Not just late, not just out of touch, but utterly, terrifyingly gone. Zamil, a geography student with dreams of environmental policy, and Nita, a bright spark pursuing a graduate degree in chemical engineering, had vanished. Their last confirmed sighting was Thursday, April 16th, a mere 24 hours prior, captured by grainy surveillance footage on the USF campus. Now their phones were dead, their social media silent, a chilling void where their vibrant lives had been. Detective Mike Harrison, a man whose weary eyes had seen too much, leaned over Jenkins' desk, a grim line etched between his brows. Campus security said they were last seen around midday yesterday. Zamil's roommate, Hasham Abu Garvey, claims he hasn't seen either of them since Wednesday evening, says Zamil was cooking dinner. Odd, isn't it? Jenkins nodded, her fingers already flying across her keyboard, pulling up basic profiles. Zamil, 22, Nita, 23, both hailing from Bangladesh, a testament to their ambition, their journey across the world for an American education, now seemingly cut short. The word missing felt far too benign for the creeping dread that was beginning to take root. This wasn't too. A youthful escapade, something felt profoundly wrong. As the initial reports were filed and patrol units began canvassing the USF campus and the surrounding Tampa area, a different kind of investigation was already subtly beginning. It was a digital ghost hunt, an excavation of the ethereal. Hasham Abu Garvey, Zamil's roommate, was brought in for a more formal interview. He sat across from Jenkins and Harrison, his demeanor a study in controlled nervousness. He repeated his story, the bandage on his pinky finger, a focal point of his anxious gestures. He'd cut it, chopping onions, he insisted, a simple kitchen mishap. But when pressed on what he was making for dinner, his eyes flickered, a brief, almost imperceptible pause before he stammered, "I don't remember." That hesitation, that missing detail, was a tiny fissure in the facade of his narrative, a crack that Jenkins' keen eye immediately registered. Meanwhile, tucked away in the digital shadows, something far more sinister was taking shape. Hasham Abu Garvey, as investigators would later discover, wasn't just a roommate with a bandaged finger. He was a user, a seeker, and his queries were not for recipes. His digital footprint revealed a disturbing series of interactions with ChatGPT, questions that painted a grim picture of premeditation. Long before Zamil and Nita were even reported missing, before their absence cast a pall over the campus, Hasham had been probing the artificial intelligence for answers to questions that chilled the very core of what it meant to be human. Questions like, what happens if a human has been put in a black garbage bag and thrown in a dumpster? The AI, in its cold, logical fashion, had responded that it sounded dangerous. His reply? How would they find out? The seed of a terrible plan had been sown, watered by digital curiosity, and it was beginning to sprout in the fertile ground of a dark intent. The initial unease surrounding Zamil and Nita's disappearance began to crystallize into suspicion, and that suspicion was increasingly direct towards their roommate, Hasham Abu Garvey. Detective Jenkins, her gaze sharp and unwavering, watched Hasham across the sterile interview room table. The bandage on his pinky finger, the story of a carelessly wielded knife while slicing onions, felt flimsy, a hastily constructed alibi. Harrison, ever the pragmatist, had already been working the digital angles, a crucial step in modern investigations. He'd requested Hasham's phone records and vehicle location data, a routine procedure that would soon prove anything but. Hasham's tale of domestic routine, of Zamil cooking dinner on Wednesday, April 16th, the day before they were reported missing, began to fray at the edges. His roommate, the second one, had confirmed seeing Zamil then, but had no idea about Nita's whereabouts. It was Hasham's assertion that the missing couple had never been in his car, coupled with his adamant denial of ever visiting Clearwater, that truly snagged the investigators' attention. They hadn't yet revealed the extent of their digital surveillance, the invisible threads they had already spun around Hasham's movements. The knowledge that they were tracking his vehicle and his cell phone was a weapon they held close, waiting for the opportune moment to deploy it. The first major crack appeared when Harrison's preliminary findings landed on Jenkins' desk. License plate reader data, cross-referenced with cell tower pings, painted a picture starkly at odds with Hasham's carefully constructed narrative. His car had been in Clearwater. More alarmingly, Zamil's cell phone had been pinging in the same vicinity. Hasham's claim of never having been to Clearwater, a coastal city known for its beaches, was now a direct contradiction. When confronted with this irrefutable digital evidence, the carefully crafted story began to crumble. Hasham's explanation shifted, morphing into assertion that he had indeed driven the couple to Clearwater, but only to check out fishing spots, using his Phone S map app. "Show us the history, Hasham," Jenkins stated, her voice deceptively calm. The request hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Hasham's response was another subtle, yet profound, shift, he admitted, to deleting his Phone S location history. The attempt to erase his digital tracks, to cover his movements, only served to amplify the suspicion. It was a desperate move, one that screamed guilt rather than innocence. Then came the admission, a concession wrested by the mounting pressure of contradictory facts. Zamil had been in his car, and so had Nita. He claimed he'd simply dropped them off at the beach, but the narrative was no longer linear. It was a contorted mess of revised truths, each one more suspect than the last, and the investigators knew they were only scratching the surface of a much deeper, darker deception. The apartment, once a shared space for students pursuing futures worlds away, had become a crime scene, a tableau of horror. Detective Jenkins directed her team with a quiet intensity, each sweep of their specialized lights revealing the insidious details Hasham Abu Garvey had attempted to conceal. In the trash, nestled amongst discarded packaging, they found duct tape, not just any duct tape, but silver, bearing faint reddish-brown stains. A preliminary test, chillingly swift, confirmed the suspicion blood. This was a stark contrast to Hasham's earlier denial of any knowledge of these items. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the forensic scientist whose meticulous work was becoming indispensable, arrived to oversee the evidence collection. Her sharp eyes scanned Zamil's bedroom, a space that had once been his own. Then, nestled amongst Zamil's belongings, she found them women S-size 6 shoes. Surveillance footage from the day Nita was last seen on campus showed her wearing shoes that matched the description precisely. The narrative was rapidly solidifying, pieces of a gruesome puzzle clicking into place with terrifying finality. Later, the second roommate, the one who had initially claimed ignorance, provided another vital piece. On April 17th, the very day Zamil and Nita were reported missing, he had seen Hasham using a cart to move multiple large cardboard boxes to the dumpsters behind the apartment complex. Hasham's explanation then, just old clothes, now seemed a grotesque understatement. The digital breadcrumbs, once faint, were now a blaring siren. A deep dive into Hasham's online activity, stretching back to April 7th, revealed a pattern of chilling purchases. Duct tape, bought from Amazon, a fire starter, charcoal, trash bags, lighter fluid. Then, a DoorDash order procuring Lysol wipes and Febreze, items meant not for general tidiness, but for erasure. The insidious queries to ChatGPT continued, each one a step further down a path of calculated depravity. Has there been someone who survived a sniper bullet to the head? Will my neighbors hear my gun? Is there a water temperature that burns immediately? These were not questions born of idle curiosity. They were the desperate inquiries of a mind planning a meticulous demise. The digital trail then led investigators to the Howard Franklin Bridge in the early morning hours of April 17. Hasham's phone, tracked by law enforcement, showed his car stopping precisely in the middle of the span. 3 minutes of agonizing stillness, then movement. The phone later returned to his apartment complex, but the nocturnal torment was not over. An hour and a half later, the phone pinged again, this time making its way to East 22nd Street, a location that would soon become tragically significant. The evidence was overwhelming digital evidence of purchase, digital evidence of intent via ChatGPT, and now the grim confirmation of physical evidence. The break came on April 24th, a week after Zamil and Nita had been reported missing. Following a lead to a location by the bridge, authorities discovered a large trash bag. The putrid odor emanating from it was distinct, matching what officers had encountered in Hasham's apartment. Inside, they found the body of a man in an advanced state of decomposition. Positive identification confirmed it was Zamil. His torso bore injuries, and his legs were deeply lacerated at the hip, allowing him to be folded into the bag. His wrists and ankles were bound, his body naked. Zamil had been brutally stabbed, his life brutally extinguished, his body discarded like refuse. The search for Nita continued, but the evidence strongly suggested she met a similar horrific fate. The trail of blood, the purchased supplies, the chilling queries to an artificial intelligence, it all painted a picture of cold, calculated premeditation. The standoff was a tense, protracted affair, the silence punctuated by the distant wail of sirens and the low murmur of tactical commands. Officer Ramirez and his SWAT team had surrounded the residence, the air thick with anticipation. For nearly 20 minutes, Hasham Abu Garvey refused to emerge, the only response to repeated demands, a stubborn, unnerving silence. Then, at 10:36 a.m., as SWAT mobilized, a figure finally appeared in the doorway, hands raised, clad only in a towel. His arrest was surprisingly peaceful, a stark contrast to the violent acts investigators believed he had committed. This marked the end of the chase, but the beginning of a complex legal battle, amplified by the unprecedented nature of the evidence. The charges were severe 2 counts of first-degree murder. Hasham Abu Garvey, now a defendant, sat in jail, represented by a public defender. His first court appearance on Saturday, April 19th, was a procedural formality, a prelude to more significant hearings. The real drama, however, was unfolding in the digital realm and in the minds of prosecutors. The questions Hasham had posed to ChatGPT were not merely suspicious, they were damning. Professor Alan Croft, a legal scholar specializing in tech law, elaborated on the implications for law and crime. Criminals continue to think that somehow these platforms are just anonymous, Croft explained, his voice carrying the weight of experience. But they leave a footprint. We've been using II and Google searches for a while now, and they are very traceable, even in incognito mode. He pointed out the absurdity of seeking guidance on disposing of a body from an AI, then attempting to cover up the crime, especially when digital evidence contradicted every lie. The absence of Nita's body, a crucial element in many murder prosecutions, presented a significant challenge. Yet, as legal analyst Dave Arenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, noted, a conviction for murder could still be secured. Prosecutors would like to have the body, but it's not required, Arenberg stated. He highlighted the strength of DNA evidence, a far cry from the skepticism surrounding it during the O.J. Simpson trial. DNA, he emphasized, was now as conclusive as it gets, akin to a videotape of the crime itself. The court documents detailed evidence of Hasham's attempts to clean the scene, purchasing Lysol wipes and Febreze, and the discovery of Zamil's body, which had been positively identified through DNA, with preliminary autopsy results indicating stab wounds. The charges also included disturbing the peace, a clear indication of a cover-up. Furthermore, Hasham's own mother had provided crucial testimony, reportedly telling authorities that her son had a bad temper and that any cuts on his body were not from chopping onions. This corroboration from within the family, coupled with the physical evidence of Zamil's body and the digital trail, painted a grim picture. The question of motive, while not an element of murder, loomed large. Jurors, Ehrenberg explained, always wanted to understand the why. However, even without a clear motive, the overwhelming digital and forensic evidence, combined with Hasham's evolving and contradictory statements, pointed towards a strong case for the prosecution. The premeditation was evident from the ChatGPT queries to the purchases of cleaning supplies and the suspicious movements on the night of April 17th, including the stop on the Howard Franklin Bridge, Florida's death penalty statute, with its provision for an 8 out of 12 jury vote in the penalty phase, and the possibility of using contemporaneous convictions for double murder as an aggravator, made the death penalty a distinct possibility. The cold, calculated nature of the alleged crimes, potentially fitting the cold, calculated, and premeditated aggravator, further supported this. The case served as a stark reminder that in an era of pervasive digital footprints, even artificial intelligence could become an unwitting witness, a silent accomplice in exposing the truth behind the darkest human actions. The journey from missing students to apprehended suspect, paved with digital ghosts and forensic certainty, was nearing its legal conclusion, a somber testament to the evolving landscape of crime and justice. The tragic story of Zamil and Nita as lost serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the chilling new frontiers of criminal intent. As we saw how even the whispers of thought could be twisted into a blueprint for destruction, we are left to ponder the darkness that can reside within the human heart, amplified by the tools we increasingly rely upon. What truly lies behind the questions posed to a machine, and how do we safeguard against such a terrifying convergence of technology and malice? We hope this deep dive into the AI accomplice case has left you with much to consider. If you found this exploration compelling, please support our work by subscribing to Content Channel for more in-depth true crime investigations. As you reflect on Hasham's chilling inquiries to ChatGPT, we ask, at what point does curiosity cross the line into dangerous intent, and what responsibility do we bear for the digital trails we leave? Thank you for joining us on this journey. We'll see you next time for another story that delves into the shadows of the human experience. Next time, we investigate the case of a missing hiker whose cryptic final social media post has left authorities baffled and a community searching for answers.